if you're watching, Jari just rang the doorbell, so I'm going to get him. BRB, as the kids say. Enjoy the music.
I've wandered to the village Tom. I've sat beneath the tree upon the schoolhouse wicket ground which sheltered you and me. But none were there to greet me, Tom, and few were left to know. They played with us upon the grass some 20 years ago. 20 years ago. 20 years ago. They played with us upon the grass some 20 years ago.
Right.
The spring that bubbled neath the hill close by the spreading beach is very low. 'Twas once
I hear Doug Jimerson singing.
almost rich, and kneeling down to get a drink, dear Tom, I started
that's great.
to see how much that I was changed since 20
Sure.
years.
Yes. It's
To
yes.
see
Those two
how
little brass bands.
much that I was changed since 20 years ago.
Oh, doughboy.org. Okay, I'm the executive director of the Doughboy Foundation in Washington, D.C. That actually is a lot of stuff there, and that's the National World War I Memorial that just opened up a couple of years ago. We will put in our final piece of completion in September, and then in October I get become the CEO, president of the foundation. Right. Well, so yes. 100 Nights of Taps. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, a lot of stuff.
Just 20 years ago. 20 years ago. 20 years ago. I hope they lay us where we played just 20 years ago.
Sure. Right. Sure. Right.
We don't see that a lot today in popular music.
No, we don't. Sure. Absolutely. Okay.
How is the volume for you?
It's very good.
Okay. Not too loud, not too quiet.
No,
Nothing like
just
that.
right.
All right, good. Oh, well.
Not too hot, not too cold.
Not too hot, not too cold. All right, good. Pull that mic when we're ready to go. Pull it a little closer to you, and I would see where you are in the frame there. So you want to move over more towards the corner of the table. It's kind of awkward. Yeah, like that. And
How's that?
yeah, and just get yourself comfortable and make the mic work for you.
Okay.
Yeah, pull it wherever you
testing,
need
1,
it to
2.
go. Oh yeah, let me just do one little thing here so we don't get that rumble. And then yeah, just sit comfortably, pull the mic to you, make it your slave, and
Thank you.
do whatever you want it to do.
Should I use my NPR voice?
Yes. I'll use mine as well.
Later on today, we have John Smith and music from South Arabia.
Wow.
Women composers who were thrown out of the country many years before coming back to dedicate.
That is an NPR thing, isn't it?
It is,
It's got to always have some kind of story of whoa, you know?
Right.
It just can't be good music.
The Parks and Recreation show.
Oh, yes.
When she visits a radio show.
Yes.
And the guy who's the announcer is the guy who does the voice
Homer
of
Simpson.
Homer Simpson.
Yeah.
And
Dan Castellana. Or
he's perfect.
Yeah. Oh, he's great. No, he does it fantastic. No, it's true though. NPR, there just can't be a celebration of music or an appreciation of music. It has to be, you know, she was
some sort of cause, right?
She was having her head beaten into the wall when she wrote the song, or some kind of horrible story of suffering, and it's never just this is great music. All right, are we ready to go?
Sure.
Alrighty then. Hello, if anybody's watching. Let's see. Do we have anybody? We have one person watching.
Oh, great.
Okay,
Hello.
good. All right, here we go.
From the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios, you're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg. And today we are talking with someone who's been on the show a long time ago, actually. It was early on. I don't remember how early on, but Patreon was new. And I remember we recorded, he was on the phone and I was in my living room. So it must have been during the COVID days. Does that sound right?
It sounds right.
Yeah. So about at least 4 years. And so now this is the first time in person. I met you at 100 Nights of Taps once. I went up and introduced myself, but you seem, dazed because, after performance, I understand, and all these people come up to you. And so I'm sure it wasn't memorable for you, but it's nice to finally sit and talk with you face to face for once.
Yes.
I can't stand doing it over the phone. It's just impersonal.
It really is. But yeah, it's great to be here.
Good. I'm glad to have you. So you do a lot with Civil War music, history in general, I should say, right? I mean, you're the executive director of doughboy.org, which is the National World War I Memorial, correct?
Right. That's the Doughboy Foundation in Washington, D.C. We will be the ones who'll be overseeing the National World War I Memorial, which just opened in April of 2021.
Why did it take so long?
That's a great question. There had been no national memorial to World War I in the nation's capital for years.
That's crazy.
Yes, and absolutely. And veterans had been asking about it for years and years and years. The last living World War I veteran, Frank Buckles, he and his family were pushing for it. They were kind of hoping that it would get done before he passed away. Unfortunately, he passes in 2011. Then
wow.
And at the age of like 110.
I was going to say he had to be really old.
Yeah. And the last one, given a great send-off, buried at Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. The family, of course, were still pushing for it. And in 2013, a commission was set up, the World War I Centennial Commission, which was set up by Congress.
That was my question.
They were set up to observe the centennial of the end of World War I, which would have been 5 years hence from that time. So they were set up, and like any kind of commission that the government sets up, they of course get major figures, political figures, to be on the board, and they sit down and say, okay, this is what we want you to do. And oh, by the way, we don't have any money.
Of course.
So they said
richest government in the world. They never have money for you.
they set upon doing this, and they raised $50 million to build the National World War I Memorial. They had hoped they could put it on the National Mall. but it wasn't to be, unfortunately. So what they did.
Where there's no more memorials allowed on the National Mall? Or?
No, not really.
Okay.
Fortunately, they were not able to get it onto the mall. But they were granted a parcel of land on Pennsylvania Avenue between 14th Street and 15th Street.
Okay.
Right in front of the Willard Hotel.
I was going to say, it sounds familiar. Yeah, all right.
And it had been a piece of land that had been in use for many years and had been turned into a park called Pershing Park because they put a statue of General Pershing there.
Okay. Oh, that's fitting.
Yeah, exactly. And they built a skating rink there. It was used as an outdoor area to eat. And unfortunately, it fell into disuse, and really a shame. The skating rink sort of fell apart.
Wow.
So they gave it to the commission with the idea that they would turn it into the memorial, and $50 million later, it's an unbelievable memorial, a tribute to those 4.7 million Americans who served during the war.
Yeah.
And in September 13th, they'll finally finish it with the addition of a 60-foot-long sculpture called A Soldier's Journey. This is a bronze high-relief sculpture consisting of 38 individual figures that tells the story of one soldier's journey through World War I. You see him at the very beginning. If you look left, going to the right, you'll see him going off to war, and his wife grabs his arm, tries to hold him back, symbolizing America's reluctance to go into the war. You see him marching off. You see him in battle. There's a portion where he's gassed, and the one figure stares out at that 1,000-yard stare.
Oh, yeah.
And then he comes marching home, and then the last figure is him giving his helmet to his young daughter, foreshadowing World War II.
Right.
It's a very emotional story. And so on September 13th, they're going to dedicate it, as it were, with what we're calling an illumination ceremony. Each section will be illuminated with a light show in the evening, and I think it's going to be a fitting way for it to be, introduced to the public. And then the entire weekend there'll be a living history, World War I living history, with over 60 World War I reenactors, music, living historians who'll be coming to set up displays, all kind of great things over the 2 days. So 13th is the big ceremony, 14th and 15th, living history at the memorial. Then on Monday the 16th, it'll be clear for everyone. And we expect a lot of people to come down and see that. The sculpture is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
It was made by a fellow by the name of Sabin Howard, who was a sculptor, lives in New Jersey, and he's spent the past 7 years putting this together.
Wow.
And
that sounds like an immense sculpture.
Yes.
With all those statues and the different, it's the same guy, but in different states, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
that's got to be tough.
You follow his story. And the other soldiers in the sculpture are actual combat veterans.
Okay.
Today, they came in to model for him. So he actually is able to get the faces of soldiers who've actually fought in battle.
Not World War I, though. No, because they're all dead.
Right.
No, so modern day combat vets.
Exactly.
Oh, that's a nice touch.
Afghanistan, Iraq.
I like that.
Yeah, and some really just when you see it up close. So he had the sculpture done here in the United States. They took it to England to a foundry there where they did that work, the casting. And then it was shipped back to the United States and then put together, placed in with a huge crane. The lift, it was in 4 separate sections, each section weighing about 5 tons, that they had to lift and then put into place. This happened about 3 weeks ago. And ever since then, they've been, of course, welding it together, putting the patina on it, and making sure everything is good. It's quite a thing to behold.
When it's all together, how big is it?
60 feet in length.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there any significance to that number?
No.
Okay.
that's
Sometimes there is, like the 44th New York. There's significance to the dimensions of the 44th New York. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know if the architect or sculpture had that in mind, but it's amazing. And as you look at the sculpture, you'll see him. You'll see African Americans in the sculpture, women in the sculpture, Native Americans, and Asian American too, also, who are portrayed in various sections.
So, because you had said, what is it, 38 individual statues?
Correct.
So it's not him depicted 38 different ways.
Correct.
It's him through different stages with people around him.
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
I got to see
There you
this.
go.
This is pretty neat.
Well, you can see it actually if you go to doughboy.org, and you'll see some pictures, photographs of it, and it's really amazing. Plus, we have a Facebook page too, the Doughboy Foundation.
Right. The doughboy.org.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So would you say that you're most known for the Federal City Brass Band?
Yeah, I would think so, except I'm actually probably wider known as, a bugler and a bugle historian.
Yeah.
And that's actually what brought me into Civil War reenacting.
Oh, okay.
About 1994, 95, someone had asked me, said, you love history, you love the Civil War and all this stuff. Why have you never
been a bugler?
Yeah, gone and done.
Yeah.
And I said, I guess I don't like to sleep outside. And so I checked out a couple units and found the 3rd U.S. Infantry had a very nice local unit, and I went and talked with them. They were happy to have a bugler.
Yeah.
And I started reenacting with them and did a lot of events as bugler. And it actually gave me a great insight as to what buglers did. We just think of them blowing calls in the morning and the nighttime and stuff.
Right.
But their job during battles was really important because they are the mouthpiece of the commanding officers.
Sure.
They have to be close by to them all the time. And I was very fortunate to work with a fellow by the name of Wayne Wolf, who portrayed a colonel and a general at times. And he knew how to use a bugler. He would not waste his voice by shouting forward.
Right.
A
lot of guys like doing that.
Yeah. He would turn to me and say, sound the forward or sound the halt, and it was great. He knew how to use a bugler, and it, like I said, gave me great insight into how the bugler was used with tactics on the battlefield.
What I found fascinating about the buglers is, I'm not sure how aware of everything we do you are, so I'll give you a little bit of a story here so it makes sense. Years ago, I embarked on this ambitious project to write a narrative, like an audio narrative of the Battle of Gettysburg. And when I started to do it, I wanted to start on June 30th. And I went to a licensed guide friend of mine, and he goes, "Why are you starting on June 30th?" And I go, "Well, eve of battle and everything." He goes, "Yeah, you should start at Antietam." And I was like, "Why?" He goes, "Well, because this is really Lee's second attempt at what he was attempting at Antietam." And I was like, "Oh." So I'm like, that makes more sense. And then you can get familiar with the characters in the army and everything before the Battle of Gettysburg. Okay. So then I start researching that and writing it out and everything. And I decided long ago that I was going to rip off the Ken Burns audio motifs and tone and the whole thing. And so I needed sound effects, I needed music, and you were kind enough, I don't know if you realize it, but you were kind enough to give me 2 of the CDs to use for it. Sure. So I did. And I'll tell you something, they make it sound so good because, and we'll get into the Federal City Brass Band and the 26 North Carolina Brass Band in a second. But anyway, after that went out and people were like, "Oh, you got to do more of these. You got to do more of these." Well, now I have to get to July 1st. And for 3 years now, I've been trying to be able to sit down and write July 1st, but between the show becoming more successful than I thought, and me not having time to do that and not having the mental focus and everything, it hasn't happened. But always intending to do it. Once in a while, I would get an opportunity. I'd meet somebody and I'd be like, "Hey, can we go out and record sound? I need sound effects. I need this. And can we go record you doing this?" And I met a young bugler and we went out to the old country club that the park owns now, because it's nice and quiet, right? So we went out there and just had him do all these calls. And the one thing that fascinated me was how many there are, yet how very similar some are to each other.
Really?
I mean, one note or one little phrase difference, but I'd imagine in the heat of battle, you got to have some pretty good hearing to pick that up, right? Do you know of any instances of buglers, or not buglers, but of the unit being confused because a call is too similar to another?
Oh, sure. It happened all the time the battlefield. And one of the ways that soldiers learn the bugle calls is by them putting words to the calls.
Okay.
Because everybody knows, I can't get them up. I can't get them up in the morning. That
Yeah, right.
And so other calls, they would write little ditties to, so that they would recognize the call. However, in the heat of battle, you've got two armies, going slugging it out, and you hear bugle calls all over the place, and a regiment might say, "Was that for us?
Is that ours?" Yeah.
Should we go to the front or go to the back? What's going on? Well, units started developing and using what are called prelude calls.
Okay.
And these are little ditties that are played prior to the call to let them know it's for that particular unit.
In other words, like attention 69th PA.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Now, the most famous one, of course, was written by Dan Butterfield.
Dan Butterfield,
Right.
yeah.
Dan Butterfield. If you've ever seen the movie Gettysburg, the young lieutenant is explaining that to his fellow comrades about, we have our own bugle call.
Dan Butterfield.
Except he sings it wrong. He puts too many Butterfields in there.
Oh, does he?
Yeah. It was a little critique about that.
Well, he's an actor.
Yeah, it's Dan.
See, if they had you as a
Butterfield,
consultant, that would have been a lot different.
Right.
So yeah, no. So because he's explaining, this here brigade's got its own bugle calls, right? And if you ever hear this, the next one's coming for you, I think is what he says.
Exactly.
So you're right. Okay. Huh. So now, did that become a standard thing, or was that just something that some would do and some wouldn't do on their own?
It becomes pretty much standard. And
Okay.
in fact, there are some regimental histories that are written, and on the front cover, there's a little bugle call that's written out. It's their bugle call.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now, I think he's talking, though, if I'm not mistaken, he's talking about a brigade bugler.
Correct.
So not only would the colonel have a bugler with him, but the brigade commander would have a bugler with him,
That's true.
which has got to be useless on a battlefield.
Well, so the brigade, plays the call, and then the regimental buglers will relay that call
Right.
to their own.
But I guess maybe I'm picturing it incorrectly. Okay, I'm there. I've got my brigade in line.
Yeah.
Okay, 1,000, 2,500 men, whatever. That's a long line. Okay, and the colonels, I get it. They're behind the lines, and okay. My bugler, does he have to do it a couple times in every direction?
He might have to.
Yeah.
Just to make sure everyone's heard. And by the way, the brigade bugler in that particular unit was Oliver Wilcox Norton, the first bugler ever to sound taps.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Why else is he famous, though? I know that name from...
Norton?
Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote two terrific books. The first one is The Attack and Defense of Little Round
Oh,
Top.
yeah, okay.
That's a great book. And then his collection of letters that he wrote home during the war called Army Letters. And if you're in Gettysburg, here's a great little plug.
All right.
You can swing down to the Gettysburg Heritage Center. They have on display an original copy, not of the book, but of the handwritten letters that Norton had given to his secretary at the latter part of the 19th century to write into a big book that was used for the publication.
Wow.
So it's original.
And that's in the Heritage Center?
Yes.
Like in a case, I'm assuming?
Yes, it's displayed. They have a nice little music exhibit there
Okay.
that I put together.
Oh, nice.
So if you get a chance, go down there. We've got some Civil War instruments on display too. Nothing as huge as the thing that's they have at the visitor center up in Gettysburg.
Oh, the instruments they have there. Yeah, they got a lot of nice instruments. So okay, you bring up the instruments they have there, and some of them, I remember I took some people there, and they were looking at trumpets and other things, and they're like, why does it look so weird? And that's not a trumpet. Like, what is that?
Right.
And because the bell is backwards.
Correct. So, yeah, there were three types of horns that were made, and they're called sax horns because they were developed by Adolph Sax, who is responsible for another type of instrument,
The trombone.
which we won't talk about. Right?
We won't
Just
talk
kidding.
about.
Just kidding. But the rotary valved instruments, and they would be made to have the bell go to the front, or the bell to go straight up, or the bell to go to the back. America is the only country that uses this type of instruments, and they used it during the middle part of the 19th century. No other country picked it up, and then towards the end of the 19th century, it all faded out. But the reason for it is because the troops liked hearing music, and the bands always marched to the in front. So the bells going to the back allowed the soldiers to hear the music much more clearer.
Very practical.
Yes.
Yeah. But that's interesting. We're the only country that adopted that.
Yes.
I guess the other countries didn't care if their soldiers were happy on the march.
Right. Yes.
We were the only one. We had the pursuit of happiness, even in war, right?
There you go. And they wanted to hear the tunes.
Yeah.
As marching along.
Now, so you've got the bugler, but you also have the drummer boy.
Correct.
So is it some units would have one and not the other, or what would they have both?
So the way it's authorized in a company of soldiers of 100 men, you're authorized 2 musicians per company.
Okay.
So it could be a fife or drummer, or it could be a bugler and a drummer, or it could be 2 buglers, whoever was basically available.
Okay.
Now, so you have 2 in each company, and then when you put, of course, there are 10 companies in a regiment, correct?
Right.
So you have 20 musicians there, and you can put them all together in what's called, the massed field music. And by the way, they're called field musicians. They're the fifers and drummers and buglers. They have a very specific musical job in the regiment and in their company, and it's different from what the brass bands do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the brass band, like, would that be the regimental brass band?
Correct. Regimental brass band.
That's a completely different set of musicians.
Right. They are not the field musicians.
Would those be the ones who would be the stretcher bearers?
Both the band and the field musicians did have that secondary duty of being stretcher bearers.
So the regimental band. Now, did every regiment have one?
At the beginning of the war, yes.
Yes, okay.
Almost every regiment that was formed in a town or a village, there was, some sort of band there. So they naturally brought their band along.
Right.
So if it was like, Casey Jones's brass band of, Michigan or something, they now became the 53rd Michigan brass band. They went with that unit. Same people, same group. They went along. So at the beginning of the war, there were literally hundreds of bands.
Wow.
In Washington in April of 1861. The air was full of music.
Just had to be a cacophony.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
So by July of 1862, Congress is looking at the bill for these musicians, and they're saying, we're spending $2 million on music?
Was it really $2 million?
It was up there, yeah.
Wow.
And
those,
yeah,
that's a lot.
It's a lot of money. So they basically said, we're going to cut 2/3 of the bands. Instead of having a band on the regimental level, we're only going to allow bands on a brigade level.
Okay, that's smart.
So basically, two-thirds, went away. However, due to the really fine research and diligent just uncovering of things by a fellow by the name of John Bionars, he went and discovered that there were hundreds of bands that existed afterwards. Regiments, they kept their own, they kept their band, and they would basically keep them on the rolls as quote unquote soldiers.
Okay.
Or they would have the band paid for by the officers.
Okay.
So units were able to keep their own bands throughout the war, even though Congress said
we're not paying.
Yeah.
That had to be confusing though, when like the whole division's in camp, and it's just all these bands.
Well,
did they coordinate to say, "Hey, tonight we're playing," and
Well, the camps were so big and so spread out. They would, they would play nightly concerts for the officers. Bands were used quite a bit. I mean, a day in the life of a musician for that time was quite hectic. And not only were he expected to do the soldierly duties, but they had to play for all the dress parades. They had to play for the guard mountings. If the troops were out on marching, they usually led the parade. Then in the evening, they would do concerts for the troops or for the officers. So they were kept pretty busy.
How about the casualty rate among musicians? Do we know that?
I'm sure that there were musicians who were killed during that time, but probably not as high a rate as regular soldiers because they were not on the front lines. I don't recall.
Probably disease took them more than combat wounds.
Actually, bands were pretty smart guys. I mean, they're a little more educated. When the 6th Massachusetts arrives in Baltimore on April 19th on their way to Washington, and they're met by a big mob, the troops, of course, the 6th Massachusetts goes through Baltimore, and they have bricks thrown at them. They turn and they open fire on the citizens of Baltimore. There are a number of casualties on both sides. The band is on the train. They look out, they see what's going on. They say, I don't think so. And they're on the next train heading back.
Okay.
To Boston.
They're smart.
So, but I'll just to finish up that story, a couple days later, the 3rd New Hampshire comes in. Same thing. Crowd gathers, but the 3rd New Hampshire has its band led by a very colorful drum major by the name of Saxey Pike. He's
What a name.
He was a fireman.
Okay. All right.
That's where the term comes from. And he is a very tall, imposing fella, and with his fur hat and a large baton, they strike up Yankee Doodle, and they lead the band right through all this crowd, and the crowd being like, so, wow, they've never seen anything like that. They all parted.
Right. The ball's on these guys, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, in that case, there's a little thing about music really providing support to their troops.
It is funny what music can do, in all different situations. Like it really is, it's an interesting thing, but that's a whole other topic of conversation for another day. All right. So the 26th North Carolina and the Federal City Brass Band are two different bands, or do you just change uniforms depending on where you're playing?
We've changed uniforms. And in full disclosure, both bands now are in the waning days.
Oh, really?
Existence. Yeah.
Oh.
150th, anniversary has come and gone. Most of the guys now in the band are getting up there, and we've decided we'll probably be sunsetting at some point in time. And
you don't want to find some younger fellas to come and take over?
Hey, we got uniforms if anybody. So I will tell you that. So my story is that, so I was bugling, and then I decided, well, why can't we have a brass band?
Right.
So I started checking around with people, and I met Mark Elrod, who is a great collector of instruments and a really knowledgeable person on the history of Civil War music, and is also the author of a book, The Pictorial History of Brass Instruments During the Civil War.
Okay.
And so he and I formed the Federal City Brass Band, and we brought in people to play with us, and Mark helped us by suggesting music that we should play. He had some from his library, and so we just built a library and a show of great music. And we decided, like, right from the very start, that we wanted to be a real representation of a standard union band. That's why we didn't call ourselves like the 56th New York or the 3rd Maryland or anything. We just wanted to be called the Federal City Brass because we wanted to be just a general,
Right.
what a regimental band was like. And we decided on the specific uniform that we would wear, the type of hat we would wear. We told people that if you wear glasses, you're going to have to get period glasses or not wear glasses at all.
Right.
And
period instruments.
period instruments. I think that's one of the things, the hallmarks about that band, and what attracted a lot of people to us is that these guys are doing it right. We're trying to portray exactly how it was back then. And we did events where we actually camped out.
Oh, that's
stuff.
cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We were
How
inspired.
long were you doing it for?
Well, we started the band around 2002.
Oh, okay. So you had a good run.
A very good run.
Okay.
Through the 150th, the 150th years from 2011 through 2015, we were incredibly busy.
Yeah.
And it ended up with us playing at Ford's Theater on the 150th anniversary of the assassination. We led the big parade commemorating the 150th anniversary of the Grand Review.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was really wonderful. We did a lot of things. Played at the Smithsonian. Just wonderful. And everybody in that group, I'm going to, give a tip of the hat to all those guys because they were just really wonderful musicians and really wonderful living historians because they wanted to be able to tell the story about the band through their playing. And it's sad that, we're sort of coming into the end of that. But while we were going along,
maybe there's sorry to interrupt you. Maybe there's some musicians that are listening that want to maybe get in touch with you and pick up the banner and carry it on.
Sure, be happy.
I mean, it should be an institution that passes down through the generations. I mean, first of all, I've heard brass bands, Civil War brass bands, and or any kind of brass band really, a Towns band or whatever, and they're good,
Well,
but you guys are good.
Well, thanks. Well, we were inspired by other groups like the Wildcat Band in Western Pennsylvania, which unfortunately has disbanded. We also we like to model ourselves on the Saxons Cornet Band. They're in Kentucky. Just what a great group of musicians there! Holy cow! And there were other groups that we looked at and said, yeah, we want to be like that. And we hope that the Federal City Brass Band has inspired other groups to pick up, like you said, pick up the banner, and be more than happy to help, with anybody who asks, which direction they should go into.
Now, I never saw you guys perform, but I've seen you at 100 Nights of Taps, and you will give a history of a song that's about to be played sometimes before it's played. Did you do that during the concerts?
We did that a lot.
Yeah.
We thought it was very important for people to have a good understanding and context. And it's interesting you should say that, because that's what sort of was the genesis of our Confederate impression, the 26th North Carolina Regimental Band. This was a band, they were a town band in the town of Salem, North Carolina. Not professional musicians, but a tinsmith, a cobbler, bookbinder, but they had their own little town band that had been together for decades, basically.
Right.
And they were also Moravians. And, and because it's a very strong Moravian community.
Oh, I didn't know that. Down there?
Yes.
There's a town in New Jersey called, I think it's called New Hope. New Jersey, and that was settled by Moravians.
Yes.
And they still have some of the original dwellings they lived in. They're really neat. It's a cool little town. It's very small, tiny little village.
There's two, it's right on the river, too.
Yeah.
Which I think is way cool.
Yeah.
There are two, major centers of Moravians, Salem, North Carolina, and Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And so we decided to read about and find out about them, and we had found that there was an incredible book called by a fellow by the name of Harry Hall, which was the history of the 26th North Carolina band, and he had written it. This Harry had written it in the 1950s as a chapter in his dissertation on Moravian wind music in the United States. He just wrote a chapter about, oh yes, there was this band that fought in the Civil War, and he wrote a book, and we were absolutely fascinated. And so we went and did as much research about the band and decided to recreate it because they have such a great story in that they were Moravians, not really pacifists,
Right.
but they felt that they had to serve their country. And their country, of course, being the Confederacy. So they looked for an opportunity to join with a regiment, and they found the 26th North Carolina. They served with them from April of 1862 to the end of the war.
Okay.
And they kept diaries.
Oh, nice.
And it's rich with information about the daily life of soldiers, what they did musically.
So do you have set lists?
Oh yeah, we tell the story.
So when you guys play as them, you're playing the songs they actually played. They actually played.
Right, their music
that's nice.
is actually in the archives of the Moravian Foundation in Salem, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So we went down there and got copies of the music and then put it in into modern notation for ourselves.
Would they would the band director, for example, compose? Would they play original compositions, or would they only do standards of the day?
Well, of course, they would play the patriotic music of the time. Dixie, of course, for them. Cheer Boys Cheer was another big tune. Music of that time was geared to the propaganda,
right?
To the war effort. So they would play that. However, the band had a couple of brothers who were very serious musicians, the Limebachs, and they also wrote some music that for the band that are preserved in their archives. One of their pieces is called the 26th Regiment Quick Step.
All right.
So we get to play
which
that.
I think is on your CD, isn't
Exactly.
it? Yeah.
Yep. So when we would do the performances, we would have our tuba player, who Julius Leinbach, who was the tuba player, would read from the diaries, and it would lead up to the song that they would play. The band was with the regiment here at Gettysburg.
Okay.
On the first day, they fought against the Wisconsin boys. The 26th got beat up really bad, losing half in casualties.
Yep.
Now, on the second day, which makes them really famous, here's what happened. They are tending to their wounded. They're working in the hospital as hospital orderlies, taking care of their own men. When their band leader, a guy by the name of Sam Mickey, gets an order from the general that we want the band to come out and play on the field.
Yeah, right.
And the note was sent back to the general saying, General Heath, saying, sorry, we're tending to our men. We have to take it. And the order comes back, saying, no, you got to come out and play. So they banded together with another group, the 11th North Carolina, and on the second day, while the battle was raging, they played under fire. The only time a military band in the United States played under fire. It was recorded on both sides. The English
Fremantle.
Yeah,
he mentioned it. Yeah.
He talks about hearing, the curiosity of hearing a band play. Well, that was the 26th North Carolina.
Wow.
Playing along with the 11th.
And did you say what song they played, or did they do a whole concert?
They played polkas and waltzes and music to cheer on the boys and stuff.
What the idea of a waltz during a battle is it's too doesn't mesh, right? And then the idea of a polka during a battle is almost comedic, you know?
But it's the tunes that the men heard, they loved. They're used to hearing it, and
I mean, you know what? But that's the thing is like, it's like in Apocalypse Now when he plays Wagner in the, I mean, it's something that gets the men going, and whether it's fife and drums or brass instruments or Jimi Hendrix, bagpipes. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, whatever it is, it's something that stirs the soul.
yeah.
Okay, so you had mentioned transposing the music into the modern notations.
Correct. Using programs like Finale, and then what we did to keep it as authentic as possible. When I would take the handwritten music, I would put it and transcribe it, and then we would reduce it for lyres, put it on that size that would fit on a lyre. And I would go to great lengths to use...
It's not somebody who's not telling the truth. A lyre is the little music stand.
Right.
Yeah, it looks like a lyre.
Right, you click onto the instrument. So it would be reduced for that size so musicians can read it and then put it in their pouch. And I went to great lengths to find fonts, Civil War fonts, for the titles of the songs and the instruments, and then tried to make the music look as if it was printed in the 1860s.
Wow.
And then I would print it. We had all the music printed on cotton paper.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice
so,
touch.
I mean, that's what they would have used back then. And also, it worked out very well because cotton paper holds up so much better than regular paper.
More durable.
Yeah. So we're outside playing and it starts to rain and stuff. I'd say, don't worry, boys, just let it dry out.
Yeah. So when you say, but what is different? So from what I'm hearing you saying is that you were able to shrink down the sheet music to these tiny little pages that they could see right in front of them. But the notations in it, like what would have been so different?
Well, back then they were all handwritten.
Okay, so you're doing it on a computer,
right?
So that you could actually know that's supposed to be an A flat,
right? Most of the band books of the time period, and if you go down to the museum, you'll see an example of a band book in its hand manuscript. I mean, they had very good hand back then.
Sure,
but still, it looks like chicken scratch to modern eyes, and it was just because the way it was done. A visiting band might come in with their books, and they would loan it to one band, and guys would sit down and scribble out.
I see.
The copy machines were in scarce.
You were your own Xerox machine.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so that's what you meant by that. Because I was like, I didn't know exactly what you meant by notations, and I was like, well, a B flat's still a B flat, right? No matter when you are, I guess.
Right.
So, all right. So that's what you meant by that. Now, going back to when you give the history of songs before you play it in a concert or something. I mean, I guess, we do this today. There's a YouTube channel I follow by a guy named Rick Beato. And he was a music producer in the 90s, and he's clearly a fan of all the music that he's ever heard in his life. And he used to do these shows on YouTube called What Makes This Song Great. And somehow he'd get all the individual tracks and he would break it down. He'd be like, listen to what the bass and the drums are doing together here. And he would really tell you why this song is such a great song. Not only from a compositional point of view, but also a recording style or technique point of view and everything. Very interesting stuff. And now he's gotten big enough where he can get, Sting to come on and sit down for an interview. Son of a bitch. But anyway, so I find that stuff fascinating. And I think people are always fascinated by the history of a song, especially a song we know really well. Like, how did it come about? How did the writer write it? What's it really about? Yeah. And so that's probably a nice touch during one of your concerts. This, I've always heard the Battle Hymn of the Republic, but I didn't know that was the story. That makes it even more interesting, and then you play it and everything like that. But what fascinates me about Civil War music is that you can have the same melody and 60 different sets of lyrics.
Correct.
So what was... You want to take that?
No. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. So what was it? It's obviously it's different than you don't have recorded music.
Right.
So it's probably a little easier to vamp on a melody.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, I think me and my friends, we had recorded music, but we would always change the words to make ourselves laugh.
Sure.
So
Well, the North and the South had different words to things like "Rally Round the Flag"
yeah,
or "Star Spangled Banner."
right.
So words were put to tunes, and we as Americans we always tend to borrow. I'm not going to use the word
Steal.
or appropriate or anything like
Right.
that, but a lot of the tunes, for example,
Like this one here.
yeah. Well, that's a purely American tune. I think that was written.
Oh
by-
no,
by
I'm
Ru-
thinking of what,
I know what you're thinking.
yeah. Shoot. Go ahead.
You're probably thinking of When Johnny Comes Marching Home.
No.
Oh.
I was thinking of the Union forever. The
That's
Confederates don't have of their own lyrics to that one.
I-
What's the one I'm thinking of that they both have? Bonnie Blue Flag.
Bonnie Blue Flag. Yeah.
And I don't think we have that on here.
No, I don't think so.
No. Okay.
But
That was almost a beautiful moment that I had with
Almost.
bleeding that in. It was the wrong song.
that's okay. But tunes like Bonnie Blue Flag, Johnny Comes Marching Home. I mean, they're actually Irish tunes to begin with, and incorporated with words, and then so many sets of lyrics each one, and that's something not new at all. I mean, going back as far as the early part of the 19th century, when Lafayette came to visit the United States in 1824, there were so many songs written in tribute to Lafayette, and set the tunes like when it was before it was the Star Spangled Banner, Anacreon in Heaven.
Right.
There were lots of lyrics celebrating him to that tune, and also to the tune of Auld Lang Syne.
Okay.
So
So really, if you were to write a song, let's say I'm the guy that wrote Auld Lang Syne.
Yes.
Okay. And I wrote my lyrics, and I'm like, wow, I'm so proud of this. But then, of course, every occasion somebody changes the lyrics. Really, the only thing I get credit for down the line is the melody.
true, but
Right.
but that a lot of times the melody is listed as like traditional because nobody knows exactly where it came from.
Right. Okay.
But it's funny you should use that particular tune of Auld Lang Syne as an example of changing to. I mean, you could set the words to America the Beautiful to Auld Lang Syne.
Okay. Wait. Let me. Beautiful for spacious skies.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies,
For amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesty above the fruited plain. Wow.
Isn't that great?
You could also do the poem in the cemetery to Gilligan's Island.
Oh, right.
That's interesting, though, that you could do that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so putting different text to tunes, not uncommon. Throughout the
Sure.
19th century.
Huh. Where did you discover that on your own, or was that is that long
Well, I
been
was
known?
reading a history of America the Beautiful.
Okay.
And when I read that, I said, nah. And then I started just like we did now. I said, well, darn it, it really works.
So was it originally set to that tune?
No, actually, so America the Beautiful, that's a very interesting history itself. The poem, which Bates wrote, she just had that published, but nobody had sent music to it. And there were many different musical settings of that prior to the one that we know of today. As a matter of fact, in some World War I manuals that were given to soldiers, music books, it's a different
Really?
melody.
Melody.
Yeah, it's very
How different? I mean, completely different. So it's
yeah.
not even a variation. It's
Right.
like completely different.
right.
And then we finally decided which version to go with when Ray Charles did it.
Right. Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
Like, you can't beat that.
No,
We're
can't.
sticking with Ray. Okay, so that's interesting. About a year ago, though, I had learned for the first time ever that the Star Spangled Banner was set to, what is it, an English drinking tune?
Yeah, not a drinking.
Or,
Every time somebody says drinking tune, I always my teeth start grinding.
because everything's a drinking tune.
Yeah, it's like
It's just a bunch of drunks back then. What else are you going to do? You had no TV.
So yeah, Anacreon in Heaven. So there was a gentleman's social club.
That's what I meant. Yeah, a gentleman's social club tune.
And they would meet, of course, to do readings and educational stuff, whatever they did.
Right.
Of course, but they would end every evening with a toast, of course, a little drink.
Sure.
And they commissioned John Stanford Smith to write a song for them, which he did, and he called it Anacreon in Heaven, to the praising to the God and all this stuff. And it was a great melody, and it seemed to fit a lot of lyrics at the time.
Yeah.
So, what we don't know, a lot of people don't know, is that tune was used for so many different lyrics before Francis Scott Key, got hold of it. And of course, Key must have not so much thinking of the specific tune, but thinking of the rhythmic that the song has when he penned those words.
Just da 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 da. Da, 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 da.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
The meter of the
yeah.
text. And if you go to any hymn book, you'll see where it describe the meter is always described in numbers.
Right.
I've always failed that class. I could never.
Yeah, I know. They always say that musicians are better at math.
Right.
That was bullshit for me.
Okay.
They're like subdivide. I'm like, what?
And
subdivide.
Academic pentameter or whatever it's like.
Yeah.
Forget about it.
Yeah, forget it. Just let me feel it. That's the way I played by feel. So, okay, but Star Spangled Banner. How old was that melody when Key stole it?
Oh, it's about 30 years.
So it was around for a while.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
So that's like if I were to...
Wait a minute. Yeah, about 30 some years. I think it's late 1700s when the Smith composes the tune for the group.
So it's like if I were to say, I don't even know, 30 years ago was what? 94. Okay, so if I were to take an Alanis Morissette song and change the lyrics to that and call it the Addressing Gettysburg Anthem or something, like that's basically what he did there.
Yeah.
Now the difference is I could be sued. There was no copyright law then, is that correct?
Right, but it's still the tune itself is still in public domain.
30 years. Oh, because
30,
no.
If you wrote it 30 years
no.
ago.
If I stole Alanis Morissette's melody.
Oh yeah.
That's not in public domain.
No, it's not public. No. So,
but the Star Spangled Banner's melody was.
Yeah, we'll send you a file and a cake.
Thanks.
And speaking of Star Spangled Banner, let me put in a plug for a terrific book. If folks out there haven't seen it yet, came out a year or two ago. It's called "Oh Say Can You Hear?" A Cultural History of the Star Spangled Banner.
Oh, interesting.
By Mark Clegg. He was a professor, I think, out in Michigan or Wisconsin. Oh, sorry, Mark, if I screwed that up. But now he's moved on to another position. But it's a fascinating book on the history of the Star Spangled Banner, how it became used, and its cultural influences, and how it is, been changed through, the way it's been interpreted over the years. Through, Marvin Gaye's interpretation, Jose Feliciano's,
Roseanne Barr's
version of it, and of course the wonderful
Whitney Houston's. Yeah, that's the best one.
Yeah. And actually, although people always give me the stink eye when I say it, Jimi Hendrix version of it is really something. You have to listen to the entire thing because in the middle of it, he plays taps on his guitar.
He does. Yes, he does. No. Well, he was in the Army.
He was airborne.
Yeah. So you're right. I think you're right. It's Jimmy and it's Whitney. The two best renditions of it.
The most interesting.
Hers is the most moving. His is the most creative.
Yeah.
But also he's got just other things like this. I think he tries to simulate the sound of combat.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's
And a lot of people thought, it was just like made up on the spot.
Right.
But Mark, in his book, goes on to tell a little bit of the history of that he had actually performed it a few times before that and had actually worked it out.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
We tend to think a lot of times that things that are very spontaneous are like, wow, he just did that. And when it's really thought out ahead of time.
Yeah. No, I know that. There is a trick to spontaneity.
Yes.
Yeah. And we also tend to think that the thing that is most famous is the first time that person ever did it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's the most famous rendition we've ever heard of it. People, I didn't know that he performed at other places at other times. So in my head, that was the first and only time he did it. I thought it was just on a whim.
Yeah.
They're like, "Hey man, go out there and do the Star Spangled Banner, man," and then no, but he's been doing it.
Yeah.
So now it kind of burst my bubble a little bit there.
Oh, sorry. We'll just have to go back and cut that out of the podcast.
Yeah, print the legend. Come on. No, so the Star Spangled Banner. Obviously, it's our national anthem now. It wasn't always,
Right.
but I would think that the history of it, like, I don't know why that's so fascinating to me that he was able to find the history of that song.
Mark? Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, because I and this is my modern arrogance at work here. I forget that people are people no matter when they live. I think today is the only time where we're like, oh wait, we have to preserve this for posterity. We need to keep this story alive. People need to know how it goes. But of course there were people back then who recorded stuff down. I mean, so I don't know why it surprises me that he's able to find a paper trail of the history of that song.
Well, yes. I mean, his work is wonderful, and him not only looking into history, but also, like I had mentioned before, the cultural influences, what happened, why people react to it in certain ways, and today, like, why the heck is it played at every sporting event?
Right.
He talks about that.
Is that a
history.
Cold War thing?
No,
Where
actually,
does that come from?
Actually, baseball and the Star Spangled Banner, the earliest reference to it is like in the 1840s.
Really?
Yeah.
So it wasn't even the national anthem
But
then.
it was a patriotic tune. In fact, during the Civil War,
Yeah.
the Star Spangled Banner is a patriotic tune on the same lines as Yankee Doodle.
Well, I knew that, but I think it's interesting that that's the tune. Did we not have a national anthem at that point?
No, not to 1932.
Okay, so there is no national anthem, but the tradition of playing the Star Spangled Banner. I mean, first of all, it's one of the most moving melodies I've ever heard in my life, even if you don't marry it to the words of the Star Spangled Banner, right? But then when you marry it to the words, it's a besieged fort and it's being attacked all night, and in the morning there's the flag, it's still up, the fort hasn't fallen. I mean, what? How much more mighty could you be, right? Why wouldn't you play that before a sporting event or anything else?
It's very interesting that it becomes really associated with baseball in 1918 during World War One.
Yeah, sure.
When at the seventh inning stretch, the band struck it up, and of course, before it became the national anthem, the third baseman, I think for the Red Sox, who was playing, was on leave from the Navy.
Okay.
And he stood at attention and saluted, and everybody out got up and stood, and they started playing it, all the time at baseball games. It just caught on.
Wow.
At that, from then on, as it's part of baseball now. No one could ever think about having a baseball game without the national anthem.
No, of course not. Or any sporting event now.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
it's spread to all the different sports.
Yes.
And it's funny, and now you hear people, I don't think in any kind of serious manner, but I do hear more people questioning why we need to do that in the first place. And who cares why? I mean, it's a nice tradition. I don't know why what's the harm in that? It's a nice tradition to have. And it's such a moving song. I don't know how anybody could not like it. I mean, it's just every time I hear it, it gives me chills. Every time I hear Whitney do it, it gives me tears.
Yes. And when I hear certain performances of it, also gives me tears.
Yes, of a different kind, though.
But
Yeah.
my preference, of course, is play it straight, you
Yeah.
know, unadorned, just
Yeah.
simple.
I think that's why Whitney was so good, because she was a singer who tend to adorn, and she didn't. She just played it straight and belted it out.
And one of the things too, it happened at the right moment.
Yeah.
You know, we're coming at the time in our nation's history where we were in turbulence now,
Yeah.
beginning of all these wars and stuff, and it just hit home. It
Yeah.
just hit the right,
Chord.
that's the word, the right chord at the time. So anyway,
Yeah.
we've gotten far apart
I
from
know,
the
I know.
Civil War, but
Well, no, but it's all related though. That's
really
what's so
is.
fascinating about history is it seems like a long time ago, but its embers are still burning today in many ways.
exactly.
So what before I let you go, you're very instrumental in the 100 Nights of Taps.
Yes, I was asked by Wendy Allen of Gettysburg.
We know her.
Oh, lovely woman.
I just talked to her yesterday,
Oh,
actually. Yep.
She's terrific. About 8 years ago, she came to me with the idea of doing this, and she had been trying for years to talk to the Park Service and can we do this as a thing. And for many years, it was just tough to make it happen. But she finally got the A-OK for it, and so I went and put myself to work and started lining up buglers for that first year, which was quite a challenge because we got the permission like about a month before. And so, but all of a sudden we got enough players for the first year. We made it through. Every night was filled. We had different people. Some of the same buglers played 3 or 4 nights.
Right.
So we made it happen. And then it took off.
Yeah.
Second, third year, more people were like, wow, this is really terrific. By the 4th year, we were telling people you can only have one night. That's it. We have so many people wanting to play.
That's great.
And it's been that way ever since. We open up our registration in March 15th, and within a day or two, all the dates are filled.
Wow.
And people coming from all over the country on their
own dime.
Yes,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
And what happens? Do you ever have somebody sick?
Yes.
What happens if they?
Well, fortunately, we have a number of buglers who live within the close
good.
by,
Okay.
and Wendy has the bat phone. We send up the signal, it's a little bugle,
bugle.
And there's some great players who'll jump in at the last minute.
Yeah.
She has done yeoman's work in putting it together. Elaine Henderson has also helped out with this, and then we have just great John and Sandy Trusk. Let's get their last name right. They are there every single night.
Wow.
John is a park ranger who also does the introductions. Sandy is there every night doing photographs.
Really?
Yeah. One of the big questions we've received about the 100 Nights is why don't we live stream this? And
You have to get a permit.
probably, but it's just a lot to do. And so if anyone's out there for next year who's willing to come every single night, 100 nights.
I'll tell you, I would love to be able to do that for you guys, because I always tell the audience that when you come to town, take a minute away. What is it? Usually 15 minutes,
15
right?
minutes.
It's not very long. Take 15 minutes out of feeding your face full of the ice cream and the wings and the beer, and go do a little something that's good for your heart and
Good for the soul.
good for the soul, good for the heart, and attend one of these 100 Nights of Taps.
Yeah, I got to just tell you that Wendy was everything we do, we're inspired by things.
Sure.
Wendy had been in Belgium, and where she went to the Menin Gate in Ypres, Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
That is a memorial built over a river that commemorate the over 57,000 Commonwealth soldiers who were killed and with whose bodies were never recovered. Their names adorn this memorial. It opened in 1927 because of the citizens of that town were just so overwhelmed and so grateful to the Commonwealth soldiers of the United Kingdom and also Canada that they built this memorial. So in their honor, starting in 1927, they had their buglers sound last post, which is not a Belgium call. it's a Commonwealth call.
Oh, right.
It's to honor them. So every night since 1928, they've had buglers sound that call. At 8:00 every night. They pull in crowds. Hundreds of people come every night to hear these guys play. Wendy saw that. That's what inspired her to put the 100 Nights together. And that, in turn, led to the daily taps at the National World War I Memorial. We have taps at 5 p.m. every single day, which is actually live streamed.
Okay.
We have a
Every
camera
single day, all year long?
every single day. We started in May of 2021. We've now done well over 1,300 consecutive nights.
Now, is there an effort to get that to be an everyday thing here?
I don't know. That would be really nice.
Would be.
Wendy will probably tell you right away. Say that's a lot of work. I mean, the 100 Nights is a labor of love. She does so well, and John and Sandy and all the other folks that help out with it. Would be great if they could do it every night here. It would.
It's a lot of people, 365 people. I'm sure you could have some double up, but that is a lot.
Yeah, well, maybe they could do what we were fortunate enough to do down at the World War I Memorial, set up a fund.
Yeah.
We were able to. We're setting up a fund to make this happen. We did a video about it, and we had Gary Sinise do the narration for it. He saw the video. He did the narration. He goes, "This is a great thing.
Yeah.
Here's $50,000."
Really?
Yeah, he wrote a check right that day.
Wow, Gary Sinise.
So he's a founding sponsor of the 100 Night, of the Daily Taps. So who knows if somebody around here wants to sponsor, they could make this happen.
I have to tell you, you're right. Who knows is the correct answer. You never know who's out there listening. I recently had two things happened to me in a month and a half's time that were amazing, and they literally saved the day. One was an influx of money to replace equipment in here that fried, and the other one was somebody saying, "Here, I got this old video equipment I don't need anymore." Yeah. And now I've got a pile of video equipment in my living room. I'm like, I don't know where to put this. I have no room for it. But anyway, we'll figure that out. Yeah. But you're right. You don't know who's listening. And as long as you just keep on going.
It's a great program. 100 Nights of Taps. The Park Service says it's the most well-attended program they have. And it's the best. It's so wonderful that they're involved. They make it into a program that they talk about history every night. We honor a soldier who was killed during the battle, who's buried at the cemetery. It makes for just a wonderful evening. And you're right, it's something that's good for the heart, good for the soul.
It is. It really is. And to be standing literally on their graves while hearing that. Yeah. I don't know. If it doesn't give you some kind of chill up your spine, I don't know what will. Especially in the opening night when you've got them all around the cemetery.
Right. That's the cascading taps.
The cascading taps, yeah.
Yeah, to do it, for me, knowing that I'm in the shadow of where Lincoln gave that speech.
Right.
It's like...
No, the cemetery here, as I think really all cemeteries do give me some kind of a feeling, but this one here is a very magical place because the guys beneath you in the Civil War section, for the most part, died here.
Yeah.
And, so you're really in it when you're there. That brings it all home.
Yeah. And the other graves surrounding it, are full of heroes too. Every June 6th when they do the on D-Day commemoration, there are, I think, 11 or 12 graves in that cemetery of Pennsylvania boys who died that day on the beach.
Yeah.
So it's when you think about that, it's quite moving.
You're right. It ties you into the major and even not so major historical events of our nation's military history because you've got there are guys from Pearl Harbor there.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so all the big ones,
Yep.
we've got somebody there, and it really it's sobering and it's humbling.
Yeah.
And I think probably most of the people in our audience who have visited here have gone to the cemetery, but I don't know if they've all done 100 Nights Taps, and I always encourage them to do that every year.
So
and it's almost over,
almost.
if you can believe that.
Labor Day is just a week or so away.
I can't believe
So,
that.
Yeah. So please, if you're out there, come here bugling our taps there every night at 7 p.m. And then if you're down in Washington at the National World War I Memorial, 5 o'clock every day. And we also stream that. So if you're near a computer on YouTube, just go to the Doughboy Foundation and you can watch it, the live bugler in a World War I uniform.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, every day, 5 o'clock. And then, be with us on the 13th, 14th, and 15th as we dedicate this, the final portion of the memorial. Get it finished.
And Federal City Brass Band and 26 North Carolina, you say that you're on the wane, but you're not totally done.
We're not totally done yet.
So if people wanted to maybe have you come and do something, how would they get a hold of you for that?
Oh, it's pretty easy. We do have Facebook pages, and they can easily get through to me on that. The Federal City Brass Band and 26 North Carolina both have very active Facebook pages, and I always respond to messages that are sent.
Now, if they're on the 2 CDs that you sent me, is there one song that you like so much that you think we should play for the people as we leave them?
Oh, my goodness.
I've got a lot of favorites. How about the Star Spangled Banner, since we talked about it?
Well, that would be a good way.
Okay.
And to end it, this is the Civil War version of the Star Spangled Banner as it was arranged by Claudio Grafula. And it has a little bit of an introduction. Almost sounds like a waltz for a while. And then you'll notice that the last section is repeated, which was tradition at that time. And then with a little flourish in the coronet.
Okay.
But that's how it was originally written. Different key too. So if you try to sing to it and find it's a little out of range,
what is it normally, an F?
it's the service arrangement is usually an A flat or B flat.
A flat or B flat.
This one's an E flat.
Oh,
so it's
that's the hardest key for me to sing in. And then, real quick, I was meant to ask you this: were these recorded in front of an audience? Because there's a few.
There are a couple of them that were recorded in front of an audience at Ford's Theater when we did a program there. And then other ones we did in studio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they all sound great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. No, really. And if you have any kind of event that you think it would be apropos for them to come and play at, get a hold of them. And jvmusic.net, right?
Well, actually, yeah, jvmusic.net is a good way. Also through the Facebook
page.
Or, just look up Jari. You look me up on Facebook, and I'm always happy to respond back to questions. I do get emails every single day, people asking questions, Civil War bugle questions. And
Good.
I try to respond as much as I can, but sometimes...
See, you can't go out to pasture just yet. People are still wanting to hear from you. So stick around for longer, okay?
I will. Hey, listen, thanks for having me today.
It's my pleasure. I love talking about this stuff with you,
Same
and I
here.
always I enjoyed our last conversation. I'm sorry it took 4 years to get you back, but I'm glad you came back.
I'll come back soon.
Anytime you want, for sure. That's it for us, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to listen to the Federal City Brass Band playing the Star Spangled Banner in a way even Jimi Hendrix can't do. See you later. Thanks for listening.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, you're very
This is
welcome.
great.
Thank you.
To the with the lighting, so they have all the lighting design for it. Everything else is the program will open with a former SEAL
Okay.
who's going to strike our bell 21 times. We just bought a new brass 95-pound brass bell.
Nice.
And then 20 buglers in World War I uniform, or 20 trumpeters, will play an opening fanfare for the program, and then it's the whole program is just like, for this dedication. There's speeches that are going to be made, and then it will end with the buglers from the French bugle call, the last post, and then taps to end the program.
Nice.
And then the band, the Pershing Zone, is playing,
Oh, cool.
and they're going to play "I Vow to Thee, My Country"
Yeah.
to end it. So
That's going to be nice.
Yeah.
And, at least you have a team to help you with it. If it were you all by yourself,
oh my God,
that'd
yeah,
be a nightmare.
yeah. But I'm still up there directing traffic. It's just... All right, I better get out of here.
Yeah, I got stuff to do as well.
All right. Oh.
Well, thank you very much.
Hey, thank you.
It's great to have you.
Great. Anytime.
I'll see you around. Actually, I was talking to Wayne.